Sorry guys, I'm not live today, but I did record this morning. Hey everyone, Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. Welcome to Keep Shooting Monday number 40. 40 of them so far. So let's start out with some news today. First, you have about 2 more weeks to enter your photo into the fall photo contest. You can win t-shirts and photos and stuff, and of course get your photo posted up to the blog. So that is some really cool. Get some really good ones. The competition is stiff. There's a lot of really good stuff, and in fact, I find it interesting that people are posting a lot of photos over to the Flickr photo group and not over into the website contest. There are some really awesome entries in there in the Flickr photo group. So guys, you might want to start posting them in both places. All right, Nikon released the new D610 this week. Has the same sensor, 25,000. 800 ISO and sorry 25.6, 25.6, 25.8, I forget, doesn't matter. Still the same 39 point autofocus, slightly faster 6 frames per second, shutter speed over 5.5, so you probably won't notice a difference at all, to be totally honest. Although the big difference is, the two big differences that is, or the quiet continuous mode at about 3 frames per second, you might notice, as well as the tweaked auto white balance. Supposedly indoor some situations that you're going to have a little bit better skin tone. And of course the fixed shutter issue where it was putting dust on the sensor. So that is the big upgrade there. If you are considering buying one, I would definitely go after the 610 instead of the 600. Other Nikon news. They are now shipping the J1 AW1 here in the United States. If you'd like to pick one of those up, I'd suggest that you can then order that and have it probably in a couple weeks or maybe even less depending upon where you're ordering it from. I saw this post over on Lightroom Killer Tips, which actually talked about should I delete my old catalogs. When I upgrade from Lightroom 4 to Lightroom 5, it creates a new catalog. It doesn't upgrade the current one. And I've actually talked about that in this video before. Basically, I keep mine for 6 months, 8 months. I still haven't deleted my old version 4 catalogs yet, but I will be soon. By the way, this is a little PSA. Make sure you check how much space your Lightroom backups are taking up. I checked this morning and I had over 10 gigs of Lightroom backups, so I was able to delete that space. And that's still with keeping 2 old backups per catalog. And I have 8 catalogs, 9 catalogs, something like that. Anyway, so I still kept a bunch of backups. I am just not a fan of the Lightroom backup program. I think it thoroughly sucks. I think it could be a lot better. It would not be difficult at all to program a new one. And I think they've gotten a little bit lazy on that, a little lazy on this update. But, you know, that's just the way it is. But check that out. It's usually in the Lightroom, in the catalog folder, and then separate subfolder there, backups. You can check out that post there. Fstoppers posted this video showing perspective changes. What do they call it? Perspective manipulation, I think is what they call it. Basically, check out this video. It's so cool. It really is. When they bring the hand in and they spin the thing, it's like, wow, that's so cool. And it's just a matter of that perspective and what you see from the camera's eye and the angle that you're at with the lighting and the shadow. And it's one of those things that really challenges your eyes and challenges your brain. And that's what we really need. Because we need that challenge. We need that idea. We need to see that shadow and light and dark. And if you look at, say, the photo of the baseball, you see that big highlight in the ball there, especially when they start to turn it. You know, you see the individual parts and pieces of that image. And so I think it's worthwhile seeing that and watching that. Maybe pause it a few times in those spots so that I think when they turn it, you can really individualize, you know, the shadow and the highlight and the, you know, seeing the detail and all those things. I don't think it was a drawing. I think it's actually a photograph that they used and then printed it out, you know, with the right shape and all that good stuff. But it's still really neat, and I think you should check it out. This week I thought I would talk a little bit about my computer setup and some things that I do to tweak my computer and the way that I do this. And it was spurred on by this article over on Lifehacker, where they talk about the 10 things you can do to your PC. And it's an interesting article, gives you some ideas, just keyboard shortcuts. It's just, you don't even have to touch the mouse. You can do these things in this article. But I'm going to take this a step farther and give you some tips and things that I do to my computers to kind of speed up my process when I'm working. Number one, I am a huge believer in keyboard shortcuts. You definitely need to learn and should learn them for your, say, your top 4 or your top 5 programs you use the most. Lightroom, Photoshop, Firefox, and say Outlook or whatever your mail program is. And Gmail does actually have, if you're using it on the web, it actually has keyboard shortcuts built in. So that's a huge plus when you're, even though you're in the browser. So personally, I should be learning more keyboard shortcuts because I'm in Outlook and I'm in Firefox all the time. I know a couple in Firefox. I don't know any at all in Outlook, and I should, you know, because it takes more time to go and find your cursor and then move it up and click the new, you know, to compose a new email. And so, you know, that's key in my mind. The next thing, the first things I do throughout the day for my own setup, as I've talked about, I use the Mac and the PC. So first thing, tweak your super bar or your task bar. All right, that is really important. Only put the stuff that you really need in there. A lot of the times on the Mac, you install a new program and everything ends up in that super bar. Remove the stuff that you don't use on a daily basis. The best thing I can say is delete it all. This is exactly what I did. I deleted every single icon in that super bar, and then the ones that I really needed. Outlook and Firefox and Reminders app and the iMessage and a couple other things that are down there. As you see here, that's all that I use. That's the only thing that's there. Everything else is gone, all right? Keyboard shortcut to then go back into other apps is a 5-finger pinch in the on a trackpad, and then you can start typing. Again, keyboard shortcut, name of your app. That works really well, and I do that all the time. Now on the PC with the start menu, that again, you really want to tweak it. Put only pin those to the bottom there with the ones that you really need, and make sure you set up the right-click menu, as you see here, that I have set up for Lightroom. This saves me a ton of time when I'm using this because I'm always in and out of different catalogs. There's 2 or 3, 2012, 2013. Then I have a separate, what I call my work drive catalog that I use, and I'm always switching in between the 3 of those. But this little shortcut makes a huge difference, and it, you know, basically that menu that comes up with Lightroom, it works fine, but it's so much quicker on the PC getting in and out of there. One more thing on the PC, you can actually hit the Windows key and then start typing the name of the app that you're looking for. It'll bring up the Windows start menu, and then it'll give you a list of the apps that start with, say, A, B, or C, or whatever you start typing. And so it automatically searches for that. Once again, making your experience a little bit faster and makes a big difference. Another thing that I do all the time, it's just a perceived speed increase. It's not actually an increase, but it makes a world of difference, is adjust the pointer speed. Either go into the control panel or into the system preferences on the Mac and speed up your mouse pointer. Especially if you're using a big, say, iMac screen, a 27-inch iMac screen, or, you know, I have a 24 to 22-inch monitor on my PC. Moving that mouse from one side of the screen to the other, that's a lot of real estate to move across. And so picking up the mouse and moving it a couple times, it gets really annoying. I found it makes a big difference to adjust that pointer speed so that you can move quicker, move through it. Any of those little in-between functions can really make a big difference and cut down on your total use and overall experience of the computer itself. Next thing, of course, use an external mouse if you don't already have one. I actually just purchased a new keyboard, which I'll talk about here in a second, but it actually works out really, really well. Another thing that I do a lot is I use a Firefox plugin called Roomy Bookmarks Toolbar. Basically what it does is it gets rid of the names in the button bar, in the ones that go across the top there. If you can get rid of those names, it saves a lot of real estate, and it just uses the little icons, the little favicons that are created there on the website. It makes a big difference. So I talked about getting a new keyboard and mouse. I got tired of putting new batteries all the time in my keyboard. The old one, I think I had like a 910 or something, Logitech. And I really got tired of it because the older it got, the more batteries it would use. So I switched to this one, which I like so far. I picked it up last week. It's a K750. Has the solar panel on it there. So basically you don't ever have to put a battery in it, which is pretty cool. Has a little tiny unifying receiver. And also comes with this mouse, which is supposed to last forever on a single set of batteries. And so, we'll see. This is the M705. You can pick them up as a package. They also have refurbs that'll save you a little bit of money. So far, so good. I like typing on it. It's real easy. Very similar to the Mac keyboard with a very short stroke, more of a mechanical style. And I guess it's mechanical. Maybe it's not. Yeah, feels very similar to the Mac keyboard, which I do like the Mac keyboard so far. So yeah, overall, it's a pretty good unit. A couple other tips that I want to talk about. I kind of forgot here. Where was I? Oh yes, a couple other things that make a difference. First, make sure you quit the applications that you're not using. You have Photoshop open, it's going to suck up processing time, it's going to suck up memory. That's bad. And the worst part of it is that on the Mac, it is staying open constantly. If you don't quit the application, if you just close the window, close the document, the application stays open. That's a problem. It's going to suck up processor time, memory, like I said, and that's not good. So you want to do yourself that favor. Quit that application. I use the Command key and Q all the time to quit an app rather than just closing the document. Last thing, add a second monitor. If you're working with documents a lot, adding a second monitor can make a world of difference, or even a third monitor. Another thing you do is use Air Display or iDisplay with either the Mac or the PC. If you have an iPad, you can extend it with that. It'll give you something. It's not perfect. It works over the wireless, so it's not super fast, but it does work well in a pinch, especially if you're taking it out somewhere, or you're working mobile, I guess would be the word that I'm looking for. Last thing, on a PC, you can hit the Windows key and either the left arrow or the right arrow, and that'll push the current window open over to left or to the right, left or right arrow, duh. And so the cool thing about that is, and I do this all the time when I'm copying photos over from, say, a memory card over to my work drive, it just splits it in half. Instead of having windows stacked on top of one another, this makes it a lot easier to switch back and forth and to see both of those in front of you, especially if you don't have dual monitors. Question from Jeff on the forum. He's talking about having either 500 pics or Flickr and Google Plus and your own website, and what's a combination there of how you should be putting them out there. Stating that photography may not become commercial, not my primary source of income. Basically wants a good overview. Here's how I utilize my photo options and 500 pics and Flickr and website and Facebook and all those things. Number one, I rarely post a photo directly to Facebook. I prefer to put them up on Flickr or 500 pics. That's just my own preference. I don't know why, I just do. Here's what I end up doing. I see Flickr and Google Plus and also 500 pics as more of a photo sharing location. You're going to share your photos, you're going to put them up there. More people are going to comment on them, that kind of thing. And my primary two are 500 pics and Flickr. I use my 500 pics as kind of my primary, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of my primary kind of best of the best kind of photos, top end ones, high end ones. And in my Flickr, I put everything else up there that are still really good photos that I want to post on the blog, but they're not necessarily the best of the best stuff. Now, the advantage of putting them there and then taking them and posting them over on your website is you're using something called a CDN, or a content delivery network. And the nice thing about that is that Flickr and 500px and even what they call Amazon S3, simple storage service, which I recently added to my site to increase this overall speed of everything else besides the photos, it makes a world of difference. It makes that photo loading a lot faster, since they distribute a copy of your photos all around the world. And so they'll, say someone is in California, well, they can download from a closer server, say a California server, rather than one over here on the East Coast where I am. So that can make a big difference in the overall speed of your website. And to me, I think your website should kind of be your main social hub, or your main hub of your business, or of, even if it's just for sharing. That's kind of the central spot. And then you utilize the social networks as the places that you share your content and you tell your story, you talk about the photos. It's kind of like when you're at home, your primary hub is your house, but you still get out and you still talk, and you go to other people's houses, and you have dinner, or you go to the restaurant and you talk and have conversations, and you're social. That's really what those are about, is getting out and being social. But it just so happens that you're in front of an iPad or a smaller device or something like that, or a computer, rather than actually being out in public. So that's my perspective, and hopefully it answered your question. Someone mentioned in the other site that TTL metering for portraits isn't a good idea, that I should have my flash unit, a Canon Speedlight, do the metering. My question is, how do I get a reading from the flash unit rather than the camera? Do I use manual mode on the flash? You didn't mention if you are going to be shooting indoors or outdoors, or studio versus location, what you're doing there. So I'm going to kind of keep this general. In general, what I do is, if my subject is not moving, say I'm in the studio or I'm outdoors and I'm in a central spot and the model isn't moving and I'm not moving, then that flash is going to be on manual mode. It's a lot more predictable. You know the amount of light that's going to come out of it, and it's not going to change. The TTL can vary a little bit, a third of a stop, a half stop, and so that isn't necessarily always good, especially if you want to get the kind of the perfect mix, you know what I mean, in there. And so it can take a little bit of work, and sometimes that TTL just is not going to give you that perfect mix, because it does vary a little bit, especially when you're using multiple strobes. Now, if you just want to meter a single strobe, then the best thing to do is to turn off the other strobes and then use a separate flash meter, which I should have grabbed it out of my bag, but I didn't. Use a separate flash meter, and then you can meter that individual strobe, or just the one. Then you can go over and meter the other and get a good setting. If you don't have one of those, the best thing to do is to set it up, put it all in manual mode, shoot a photo, look at it on the back of the screen, and see if it's giving you the mix that you want. If you need to look at it a little bit closer, then bring a laptop or an iPad, transfer that photo over to that other device, take a look at it there, see if that's going to help, if it's give you that right balance that you're looking for. But for the most part, that's the way that I do it most of the time. It's pretty rare that I've been using the flash meter anymore. In fact, I took the battery out of it so that it didn't explode in it and ruin it. But it works pretty well for me all the time. And try a method out; it might work for you. I think the key, though, is to be, if you're not moving, subject isn't moving, you're on a manual mode. Why is it when I shoot someone dressed in white, I cannot get the flash to fire at the correct exposure in eTTL? Melbourne, it's very similar to what I talked about a second ago. But to answer your question, is because the camera and the flash are trying to make everything kind of a gray instead of a white, because that's the way that the meter works, and so it's going to overexpose. Underexpose. My fault. It's going to underexpose. So if you ever try and shoot photos out on a sun or on out on the beach, it's probably going to be underexposed. Say you're out in the snow, it's going to be underexposed. And so that's normal, that's just what happens. So you need to adjust for that a little bit in order to make those things white. But back to my earlier point, if you're shooting a flash with where you're not moving and the subject isn't moving, put it on manual. You're going to be better off. It's going to be a lot more controllable, and it's going to be a predictable amount of light coming out of that flash unit, and you're going to end up with a better photo. Lastly, I thought I would talk about this photo out of the Flickr photo group. It's a good photo, and I love the really good sunset, and the colors are awesome. I've actually been to Red Rock Canyon, so I know how beautiful it is there, but I think it could use a little work. Number one, the very blue foreground after the sun went down, basically it's an underexposure issue there. That's why it went blue. I would definitely adjust that white balance to make the color a little bit better. And the other thing that's a little weird for me is the horizon line that's right in the middle. I think what I would have done is probably move that horizon line down to the bottom third, just to give you a little bit different perspective and a little different look. I'm not a big fan of always putting that horizon line right smack dab in the middle. You know, I want to try to find some other something that improves it a little bit. So Eric, I'd like to see, you know, next time, try something different, try a different angle. Maybe the center one works, maybe it doesn't, but try a couple, do a couple things. Same thing when you're editing, do a couple. I actually posted this photo to the Flickr today, and I actually did a couple of edits. Do I want this to be black and white, or do I want it to be color? And I settled on the color one, and I was happy with it, got the right amount of saturation, but I needed to play with it just to be sure, and that's where in Lightroom, the virtual copies comes in really handy. I'll edit once, and then I'll do another and another, and then I can come back and compare the three and just be sure that this is where I want to go, where I want to stay with a particular image, especially something like this, where you can do a lot with it and different editing. And but so far I'm pretty happy with it. I might try a different edit again, but so far I'm pretty happy with it. So I think that is everything for today's show, and so we'll see you next week. Greg Cazillo, Cazillo.com. Thanks guys, keep shooting.